Yo, what's going on? It's Rodney G back again. So I wanted to share just a video with some economic context because one of the things that I noticed with people in America is that a lot of times people just don't understand how things work. They don't really care, right? We are so entitled and so overprivileged and so just used to having everything our way that we sometimes lose sight of the fact that you need to gain some context, some understanding about topics, issues, subject matters, and so forth. And one of the things that I've learned that we mess up, or rather we misunderstand, is economics. Especially if you're somebody like me who you know is not educated and didn't ever take economics in college or things of that nature. So a luminary that a lot of people respect and look up to and take knowledge from is a man Thomas Sowell. And I just want to share a video because even though it's a short video, he mentions the context of understanding wealth and prosperity that a lot of people misunderstand. And I think it's very valuable to understand the proper context of wealth, as he's going to mention in this video. Let me put it up here for you. So let's go over what he says here in this interview. Thomas Sowell on wealth creation, human capital, and colonialism.
Conflict in the world, sometimes, as we've mentioned, drawn along racial or ethnic lines, is poverty. What are the true causes of poverty, as you have been able to discern them in your study of the world in a comparative way?
Now, before I let him get into that, mind you, and I've had these conversations with people. People believe poverty. They believe that poverty is just like something that's just you know otherwise people wouldn't be in poverty if it wasn't for the white man, right? And that the crime that unfortunately a lot of people have to endure is because of poverty. And I had an argument with a person about this. So I was like, no, uh, crime doesn't cause poverty. Poverty causes no, the other way around. It was like, no, poverty doesn't cause crime. Crime causes poverty, right? It's not that poverty causes crime just because people poor. Now they all of a sudden have to commit crime. Just because you poor, how does being poor make you say, you know what? I don't care about the sanctity of the rights of the property or the blood or the honor of my fellow neighbors. Forget all of that. No, it's the other way around. It's when you don't care about the sanctity of the life and the property and the honor of your fellow neighbors, your fellow citizens, and you act in that way to you destroy your community. That causes poverty because now people who have real businesses, they're not gonna want to do business in a community in a place where people act like that. And I know that's a whole long and drawn out conversation, but I just wanted to throw that in. Let's get to this part.
I'm afraid that I haven't even looked for the causes of poverty.
See that?
I regard poverty as just simply the absence of wealth. So what I look for are the things that cause wealth to occur. I don't believe that there's any particular reason why everyone in the world would, in fact, have the same wealth. There are certain peculiar circumstances that have arisen in a few countries on the face of the earth, and only relatively recently in human history, that has made the kind of affluence that exists in the United States or Western Europe or Japan commonplace in these countries. So what I'm interested in is what peculiar set of circumstances have caused that to come about. I don't have an answer to that, but I think that people ought to be asking that question and not the question of poverty. Everyone is born poor and ignorant. To the extent that people become different, we have to find out what are the things that enable them to become different, and how can those opportunities be more widely generalized.
Well, you have written that.
Now, that's why I wanted to share what he said. We're all born poor and ignorant, right? As it says in the holy book, you came into this world not knowing anything, and God gave you eyes to see, ears to hear, and a mind to think, or a heart to understand. Nobody's just born wealthy. Nobody's just born with abundance. No, we're all born poor, right? And don't really, and then he said, what I look for are the peculiar circumstances that cause wealth. Right. So first of all, what are the peculiar circumstances that cause human beings to have so much more than the animals? Because we're born almost like the animals. So what makes a human being able to have a computer and a car and a helicopter and a building and air conditioning? It's humans' minds, right? So you have to learn how to leverage the circumstances to create wealth. It don't just come naturally. And the reason why this is important is because when people don't understand, everybody's born poor. The peculiar circumstances that cause wealth are the things that people need to learn. Therefore, in America, especially for the Black community, but any poor community for that matter, to say that, well, the reason we're poor and not wealthy is merely because rich people don't want to let us be rich, as if to say wealthy would be your natural state if it wasn't for the wealthy people, as opposed to understanding what are the things that I can do to create wealth, right? And I know this is true. People who understand how to create wealth speak a different language. Entrepreneurs and leaders speak an entirely different language than the regular I would say working class, but the regular person who doesn't understand how wealth is created. They speak a different language. They don't talk the same, they don't think the same. They're not better. Their minds and attitudes are just open to these greater ideas. So that's how wealth of prosperity firstly is created, with the mindset and the attitude, and then the actions, and then the resources come as a result of the actions and activities. I guarantee you, a lot of people, and I notice I've had these conversations, would have a visceral reaction to what I'm saying. It offends them to say this. It offends them to say work and education is required to create wealth. It offends people because they think it should just come. However, fundamentally, and this is why I like conservatism. From what I learned so far about conservatism, is an ideology about first believing in God and then believing in the natural order that God made. And a part of that order is like what Dr. Sowell just said. There are certain circumstances that create wealth. And you have to learn what those things are in order to create wealth. It doesn't just come down naturally. Even the rain that comes from the sky naturally and causes the plants to grow does not equal a farm. No, you have to learn agriculture and then do the hard work to create a farm and to create that type of wealth. Likewise, in this modern computer first world age that we're living in America, it's likewise education and proper activity. Now, to be ignorant and to shun education and to shun the behaviors that will create wealth, to not want to read. I had an argument with a guy on Instagram just the other day where it was a video of some young guys in the hood shooting fully automatic handguns with these things that they call switches, where they add a switch, this device, this apparatus to a handgun, to a Glock, and it turns them fully automatic and they shoot like a machine gun, right? And of course, a lot of guys were going to automatically bring excuses. Oh, well, the government give the switches anyway. So my reply was, well, the government likewise provides libraries. And of course, it went over his head, and he was like, well, what does that mean? What it means is, regardless of the excuse that you give that the government provides the switches, right? The government likewise provides the libraries. But why aren't the young men in the library reading books, learning economics, reading books by Thomas Sowell, learning computer engineering, learning software engineering, learning entrepreneurship, or even learning history to put life at present in a context that's more constructive? Why not be in the library reading about the life of Frederick Douglass and reading about the life of Booker T. Washington? These men were slaves, and they understood and valued education and how that would help you attain nobility, wealth, prosperity, and just coming up from slavery, like the name of Booker T. Washington's book. Why did they volunteer to go to pick up the pistol and use the switches as opposed to the library, right? Because reading and education are the things that help create wealth. So why do you choose the other thing? It's because it's a failure in their responsibility, a failure in understanding, and a failure in acting. Like if you look at my other video talking about Kanye West. But that's too much work for a lot of people. And the people who insist that that's too much work and insist that that's not the solution, even though you would think, well, how many decades got to go by since the Voting Rights Act, since the desegregation, since America passed laws to give African American or Black Americans their human rights under the law in America? How many decades after that are Black people still going to say, well, no, we still don't have our rights? Even to the point where right now you have millionaires on the airwaves every single day still telling Black people, no, you don't have your rights. No, you're not free. You're not free. You're still a slave. You're still in bondage. You're still oppressed. It's like, really? I'm still oppressed? But you're a millionaire. You live in the hills of Hollywood with a pool. You living great. But you get on the airways every day and you tell people that that we're not free, that we can't have a mansion with a pool in the back in the Hollywood Hills like you have, D.L. Hughley, right? That's what you're telling me? Yes, that's exactly what they tell you. That's what they do. But what he won't tell you is that, you know what? Well, I'm not gonna say D.L. Hughley or people like him won't say these things. In my opinion, it's an unfortunate imbalance of attention that's given, right? The idea that, hey man, learn software engineering, learn how to create software as a service, learn how to skill that's marketable, right? And focus on that, right? Then they come with the excuse, oh no, I can't. Yes, you can. Oh well, it's gonna be hard. Oh well, life's supposed to be hard. It's gonna be hard regardless. But out of the two choices of being a victim and striving and fighting and working, which one you think is going to get you what you want faster? Anyway, I don't veer it off, but I just wanted to share these words of Thomas Sowell.
In order to be a partisan of the poor, you must at first be a partisan of the truth. What then do you think gets close to being at the truth of the sources of wealth generation? What creates wealth?
Oh, skills, traits of human beings of one sort or another, discipline, organization, entrepreneurship. Again, there's not the slightest reason to expect these various factors, and there are many, many others, obviously, are ever going to be randomly distributed. Every single group has its own history. It has its own geographic setting in which it developed and so on. It would be an absolute miracle if all these factors were the same across groups. And nowhere in the world do we find them even approximately the same. The difference in income between blacks and whites in the United States, for example, is very commonplace around the world. It's about the same as the difference between Sephardic and Ashkenazic Jews in Israel. It's smaller than the difference between Chinese and Malays in Malaysia. It's much smaller than the difference between East Indians in Africa in East Africa. And you could go on and on down through history and around the world. Nowhere do I find this even distribution of income or the even distribution of people in occupations or in institutions that people talk about as sort of a norm that would exist if there were no institutional discrimination.
Now, that was beautiful how he broke it down. And this is one of the reasons that it's dangerous when you exaggerate the idea of your race to the point where you lose sight of your soul, your consciousness, who you are as a thinking, breathing, working, acting human being, right? Now, that's not to say that, you don't acknowledge your culture or the group of people that you're from. But when you assume merely by that certain things are just a given, that certain things are automatic. And as he just mentioned, all around the world, there are different groups with disparities because one group embodies certain characteristics and another group may not embody those characteristics. And then the outcome of that is then one group may be more prosperous or have more wealth than another group, right? A lot of times when, you mention these worldwide observations and people's like, well, I'm not them. I'm not in Malaysia. I'm not Chinese. I'm not over here. And they lose sight of there's a lesson to be learned, that there are things that you have to know and things that you have to do to create wealth or to create other outcomes that you want. They don't just come automatically. And you can't just sit back and complain and expect certain outcomes to come without doing some actual and practical wise work towards attaining those outcomes. But this is the norm for so many black people. And if anybody is crazy enough to say anything different, they are excoriated. They are assassinated in their character, like Kanye in the other video I did. Like what's going on in the media now with Kanye West at the time of this recording. That's why I wanted to share the words of Dr. Sowell, right? As he just mentioned, there's no reason to just believe that people would just be automatically wealthy if it wasn't for some type of, institution in their way. And then this is not to disregard the history of America. This is in light of the history of America because black people in America put in work to help build America, bled and shed tears and gave lives for America, in America. So now in 2022, when there's so much opportunity, so much freedom, and so much abundance, to continue to tell black people that they can't succeed, that they can't produce, that they can't do more of what they can actually do is actually a crime against black people. And it's not the Republicans and it's not the white man that's in black people's face every day telling them they can't do it and telling them that they're victims. It's black people. So if you made it this far, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.